into our overall strategy and response to this pandemic. I remain very grateful to the comrades and colleagues who are participating in there. On Higher Health, let me take this opportunity also to congratulate Higher Health for launching what is called Health Check, which is a purpose-built daily screening and monitoring tool using one's own cell phone to be used in all of our institutions. It is available in various platforms, even on WhatsApp. One does not need to have a smartphone, but you can use any device as a phone to access the health check, or a tablet for that matter. Health check is secured to use by students and staff entering our campuses daily to self-check their body temperature, and we link such data to the tracking system of the Department of Health. In other words, with Health Check, you can check yourself in the morning every day or any time, your temperature, and if you then press a button to send your information, it goes through the database of the Department of Health that we have on a daily basis as people are screening themselves. All students and staff, approximately 2 million, will be required to register for Health Check and use it every day to assess their own level of risk prior to entering campuses. Based on the answers entered on the platform, the person receives, once you have entered your data, the person receives a message indicating whether you are a low, moderate, or high-level risk, depending on the reading from Health Check. If the risk is low, the individual will receive clearance valid for 24 hours. This tool allows for early detection, mapping, and management of COVID-19 cases within higher education institutions and feeds into the National Department of Health tracking and tracing system and data, as I have said. Higher Health has previously provided detailed COVID-19 guidelines on how to deal with prevention and care of physical health for students and staff. However, mental health of both staff and students is equally important, and appropriate guidelines have also been developed to deal with this. An overarching protocol on routine cleaning for COVID-19 prevention guides universities and TVETs on how to continue their functions in a responsible manner. This guideline also addresses the means to prevent the spread of infection by exercising physical distancing on campus, cleaning of campuses and other areas, personal hygiene, health promotion, screening booths, and environmental management in areas like hostels and canteens, and how to deal with students and staff who have been exposed to the coronavirus and or infected. Guidelines for the management of and response to mental health and substance abuse related to COVID-19 respond to continued concerns raised by global public health leaders. In other words, we have developed, working together with Higher Health, which is the institution that is helping us in the post-school education and training sector, all these measures in order to make it easy for people to monitor themselves and also to get assistance where required, like for instance, where there is need for quarantine and also to link up with the rest of the health system. We must thank Higher Health for continuing to walking this journey with us. All these guidelines outline why and how students and staff may be impacted and how to assist individuals that may experience programs. Through this protocol, which by the way we are going to be circulating to all our institutions. The universities and colleges are also urged to keep top of mind the issue of mental health. One of the issues that we are attending to is the issue of mental health, which unfortunately often gets forgotten. that COVID-19 is not just a bodily infection moving through your arteries or veins or whatever the case may be, but it also does affect the mental health of people. People who are either affected directly themselves or who have got relatives who are affected, who are sick, or who have even passed away. Therefore, you can't effectively deal with COVID-19 only through attention to the physical body or medical needs of the body without also attending to mental health. As a matter of fact, we are getting indications that in a place like New York, where there are very high numbers of deaths, often the deaths that are counted are people who have been diagnosed as being infected by the coronavirus, but some of them, by the way, die as a result of suicide and heart attacks as a result of the challenges posed by COVID-19. But they are not classified as COVID-19 victims, when in essence they are. That is why we appreciate the work that we are doing with Higher Health to also focus on mental health in our institutions. On the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, that's the next matter I want to deal with, and also to give progress, as Ishmael has said, since our last briefing. On Friday, the 31st of January 2020, I met with the South African Union of Students, their leadership, to further discuss matters that had been raised by the union earlier that time in the year, as well as other matters of common interest. Amongst the issues that we agreed at that time as critical for further discussion included, amongst others, the issues of the student funding policy that provides for what we call the N+1 and N+2 years of funding students. In other words, to remind our viewers and listeners, if you get a NSFAS bursary or assistance, you are expected to finish your diploma or certificate or degree within a particular period. With the old NSFAS system prior to 2018, we were giving NSFAS students at least an extra 2 years to finish their degree or diploma. If it's a 3-year diploma, we would allow you to fail twice, taking into account these were poor students. But after 2018, because now we're providing a more comprehensive bursary, we said you can only allow you to fail once because there are many other people who are needy. Now, the students had raised this matter with me, that they are concerned that this rule is discriminating against some students. And both my Department of Higher Education and Training and the National Student Financial Aid Scheme have been inundated with requests from students to make changes to this rule, which is part of the core funding policy of the scheme for students registered before 2018. Now, we want to say this. NSFAS is guided by this policy, which is the Department of Higher Education and Training policy, in respect of all NSFAS qualifying students before any funding is approved. So we are not going to change the stipulated number of years within which NSFAS beneficiaries are expected to finish their studies, both in terms of the pre- and post-2018 NSFAS requirements. In other words, we're not changing the N+1 or the N+2 rule, but following extensive improvements in the running and the functioning of NSFAS, the application of the rule has become more efficient by 2020, and a significant number of students were found to have exceeded, in terms of the old system, the N+2 rule in terms of their years in the system. In other words, they've been at institutions for more than the number of years that they were supposed to be, and therefore the N+2 rule kicks in. Now, after I had requested NSFAS, having met with the students, to look into this matter and check if indeed some of the issues raised by the students could have some validity, because there were lots of issues raised by students when we discussed that they feel that this rule was not being applied correctly or it was being unjust in some instances. We did indeed discover that there are cases where the application of the rule may have been applied inappropriately or in an unjust manner. This we found in the following three areas. Firstly, students who may have deregistered in the first semester for prior years of study for financial or other reasons, yet they were counted as if they had finished the academic year. In other words, students who didn't finish the year for whatever reasons, we counted them as if they had, without even looking sometimes at the reasons why they have deregistered before they even finished the semester. The second area which we found was that students whose academic progression had been affected by medical or psychosocial challenges, and where evidence existed supported by medical certificates and other evidence had been provided, we had to address this, because these were students who couldn't finish or proceed for legitimate reasons because they had a health or other related problem. Also, the other area which we found is that there were students who had exceeded the N+2 rule based on time in the system, but who are currently, and even this year, are in their final year of study and will graduate in 2020. Now, NSFAS, then when we were examining this matter after our engagement with the students, had received approximately, or has actually, not just in the past, has received approximately 9,000 continuing student appeals, many of which relate to the application of the N+2 rule. Now, we are committing today that NSFAS will look at the above three categories that I have outlined of students in considering the appeals. In other words, the 9,000 students who have appealed will consider their appeals. And where we found that they may have been unjustly excluded from funding, they will be funded. In other words, we're not going to take away the rule, but we are going to focus on these students who have already appealed. 9,000 of them will go through them. Where we found that there was this discrepancy and they actually qualify, we will fund them. And we hope that this will go a long way in putting this matter to rest. It won't be a blanket approach, one size fits all. Now, I would also like to respond to the absurd allegation from the Democratic Alliance that NSFAS is going to be writing off student historic debt. I don't know where the DA takes this from. They just think that they have a license because they're an opposition party to just write what they like. It looks like some of them can't even read, unfortunately. Now, I want to explain what this is. What they are saying is factually incorrect. There is no debt that we are going to be writing off. We have done that twice before. And what was being pointed out, and what has already been pointed out by the NSFAS administrator, who is here, by the way, if people need further clarity, was that he clearly stated that the 1.96 billion rand referred to by the DA spokesperson on higher education and training is actually irregular expenditure that arose when the previous board of NSFAS applied unspent historic debt from 2016 and 2017 to fund NSFAS qualifying students in 2018. This was a legitimate diversion of funds. There was nothing corrupt about this. However, due processes were not followed to get approval from the National Treasury in order for NSFAS to do this with that 1.96 billion rand, which has already been dealt with, and before there had been cancellation of historic debt. As a result, the Auditor General raised this as a regular expenditure. This was not a loss to the fiscus, but will simply be an adjustment of a book entry with no release of funds or incurrence of any liability, and NSFAS is in the process of clearing this with the Auditor General. That's what the administrator explained. And the DA comes with headlines that this is what we are going to do. It looks like they are running out of issues, at this time when we're in a lockdown. So any other little thing that they can find to make themselves relevant, they want to do so. You can't be publishing such irresponsible statements when we are in the middle of dealing with a virus and we want certainty in the system, and you come and introduce this, and it just causes so much uncertainty and confusion in the system. That is irresponsible, and I strongly condemn this behavior. Being an opposition party does not justify just recklessly dealing with sensitive matters in this way. But let's not be diverted about that. I have explained it now. Whoever still has got additional questions, the NSFAS administrator is here to further clarify much more competently, perhaps, than I can do. I also would like to indicate that the contract of the administrator is still in place until the end of his contract and the finalization of the appointments of vacant senior executive management posts, including the appointment of a CEO. And the terms of reference of the administrator of NSFAS states that he must ensure, amongst other things, a smooth transition between his administration of the entity and the new executive staff that will be employed. I'm also in the process of initiating the appointment of a new board of NSFAS in terms of Section 5 of the NSFAS Act 56 of 1999. Now, let me come then to this issue of zero rating of local educational content. As stated in our previous media briefing, we have successfully negotiated with all mobile network operators very favorable rates for our NSFAS students, including the Funza Lushaka students, to receive, as we had promised, 10 gigabyte of data daytime and 20 gigabyte nighttime for 3 months, starting from the 1st of June, and subsidized by government for NSFAS students. Once more, I thank my officials in the department and colleagues in the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies for their assistance. Now, simply zero rating, as we had explained, is that all education websites in the post-school sector of our institutions, you won't be charged. You won't be using your data to access them. So you will access them for free. Now, with the exception of what is known as embedded content like YouTube and some videos that may be charged for. Now, as part of the statement, I've made available an attachment with a table that has got information on the percentage of institutions that are zero rated. But in terms of our data now, we have about 586 websites in our sector that are zero rated. Now, we are, however, implementing what we would call a hybrid approach, combining zero rating and education data bundles. My department, together with the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, we have now concluded negotiations and standardization of pricing and conditions with the cell phone companies for this data for 3 months. So these data bundles now are going to start being available, as we had said, now at the beginning of June. Continuing, by the way, other data bundles that have already been given by some of our institutions. We estimate about half of our universities, for instance, have actually released data bundles for students or for certain categories of students. And we are going to be continuing with this until we reach all NSFAS students. But for NSFAS students, these data bundles will be subsidized by government. Funding for university students will be made available through reprioritization of existing budgets of universities. The COVID-19 responsiveness grant that we have set up, which we are working on for each university, will at the very least cover the data costs of these students. Universities, after agreement with NSFAS, will get into individual agreements with the cell phone companies and provide these companies with the necessary information on students. TVET colleges will be funded through savings from previous year's student bursary funding held by NSFAS. The provision of data will be part of the full package of the provision of devices to TVET college students who are currently NSFAS beneficiaries. In other words, your TVET college student, you will get these data bundles. And of course, I will explain about the gadgets together with the gadgets, but I will explain what is happening now with the gadgets that we have committed to providing. It remains my belief that the current negotiated rates with the cell phone companies will also offer affordable packages to the missing middle students. I again would like to appeal to our cell phone companies to work with institutions to ensure that this happens. On my part, as I have said, I'm continuing to do the work towards the establishment of an affordable higher education loan scheme involving the private sector for missing middle students. On the electronic devices, the gadgets, for the past 2 weeks, the ministry and the department have tirelessly been engaging with National Treasury on the procurement of devices for the NSFAS students. Today, I can confirm that by the end of this week, we will be commencing with the central procurement of these devices, particularly laptops, through an open tender system, given the nature and the value of the procurement. And this will be done, this process will be led by NSFAS. Now, we have agreed with the National Treasury that given the huge amounts involved in the central acquisition of outstanding tablets, this is not the beginning of the tablets. Many institutions, about half of them, as we have said, have already given out or are in the process of giving out tablets to students. But for the rest of the NSFAS students, this process applies to them that I'm explaining now. We have agreed with the National Treasury that given the huge amounts involved in the central acquisition of outstanding tablets, it is better to follow proper procedures than take shortcuts, even if there is some delay, so as to properly account for spending of taxpayers' money. Treasury has agreed with us we're going to have a shortened process of calling for expression of interest over a 14-day period, working through NSFAS, which is normally much shorter than what we do. This may cause some delay, but we better do so because this involves billions of rands of taxpayers' money. But the gadgets are coming. We will be advertising, and then as soon as we appoint service providers in the matter of weeks, I will also announce that, though I'm not involved in that. As soon as I'm told, I will announce that and then give a clearer indication of the next batch of gadgets that will be provided. I want to be honest here. I want to urge the parents, the staff, and the students to be patient. Mhlambe ke sengingabuye ngiyibeke lento nangolimi lwakithi. Sizobathengela abantwana beNSFAS lama computer okusebenza. Tesilibazisile kancane. Bekuwukuthi asifuni ukuthatha indlela ezimfushane ukuthi sizosebenzisa imali eningi kangaka amabhillion siyowathola lama computer noma kanjani. Ngoba kuzobuya abantu bathi Nzimande uwathenge kanjani lama computer ungalandelanga imithetho neindlela okufunakala ukuthi zilandelwe. Asifuni lento yokuthi mina akangizuba ingxenye ukuthi imali kaHulumeni isetshenziswe noma kanjani. Ningixolele ngani zakwethu, ningamane nithi ukulibala kancane kodwa ngazi ukuthi imali kaHulumeni isetshenziswe kahle. Kunokuba kuthiwe Nzimande wenzeni unike obani lo 3 billion ngoba phela iyala lapho le mali esikhuluma ngayo. ngitheke ngithi-ke kubazali nabafundisi othisha ngicela uxolo ukuthi sizothi ukulibala kancane kodwa soyenza lento emasontweni nje amabili kwamathathu ngoba senginitshela ukuthi hayi-ke sesizoqhubeka manje kuzokwenzakala sibe siyithole lento ngey'ndlela eziyiyona ngoba asifuni izinto sizoloku sibuzwa imibuzo ukuthi laba banikwe kanjani kube ngathi khona abantu abangene ngopotsho entweni la kusebenza khona imali zikahulumeni angiwumuntu weqiniso-ke mina angifihli ngifuna ukuyisho lento izwe lonke lazi kodwa amakhompyutha ayeza sibekezele okunye-ke ngifuna ukusho ukuthi uma engakafiki senine-data sicela ukuthi nisebenzise amafoni eni lawo niwasebenzise ukuthi nikwazi ukuthi nithole izinto ebenizozithola ngale data noma ngabe beninama-computer kodwa ezizokwazi ukungena ey'ncingweni zenu okwamanje nicicimezele ngalokho akufani nokungabi nalutho ukuthi nje iselfoni incane kodwa uthola yona lento efanayo nobuzoyithola ukuba ubuyithola kwikhompyutha bengicela ukuthi sibambisane ngoba sibhekene nesitha esiyinkinga esingavumi kwesinye isikhathi ukuthi senze izinto nje noma kanjani. As I have said, a number of universities have already and continue to provide gadgets to students. I will make further pronouncements on this, as I have said, in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And there would have been much more progress, I've been assured by the National Treasury, on this score. But I do want to say, as I have said, to emphasize that already 50% of our universities have made provision for laptops. So it's not that everything is at a standstill. We are aware that what is at a standstill is TVET colleges. But we will make the history by getting NSFAS students, for the first time ever, TVET college students, to get laptops. Naninfane nabanye abafundi basemanyuvesi ngoba asifuni nibukelwe phansi kube sengathithi lezi ikhungeni kuzona azibalekile zibaluleke nazo nokufana nezinye ikhungu kungako sithathe lesinyathelo okokuqala emlandweni ukuthi abafundi abafunde ema-TVET nabo bazobe begaxe kahle lo mshinyana wabo befana nabanye abafundi basemanyuvesi ukuthi kuyalibala kancane njengoba ngishilo ngifuna silandele izinto ngendlela ayibambisane nje lapho bantwana basekhaya. Now, all our institutions have developed their detailed strategies for remote multimodal teaching and learning during the period of the current lockdown and for all the levels. And we have emphasized to all the institutions that no student must be left behind. By the way, the other thing I need to say is that part of the delay we are having also has to do with the fact that we also have to count every student who has received a laptop, so that when the next phase comes, we don't find students who already have received laptops to find that they receive another laptop, because that would be unjust. We are in the meantime working, and I have to say this, on a more medium to longer term solution to this issue of digital technology and its assistance, that we are going to be launching a locally produced communication satellite. We may know that satellite technology plays a key role in closing the gap, the digital divide, largely by bringing distance learning to schools regardless of geographic location. We are doing work now mapping which areas do not have connectivity. And we are working with our Department of Science, my other Department of Science and Innovation, also to work towards producing a local technology, produce communication satellite that will actually move us towards reaching all corners of our country with connectivity. This project requires about 5 billion rands in expenses for its design, manufacture, and to operate. And we foresee that with this initiative, it will break even within 6 years, but in the process, giving the country data sovereignty, generating profits and much needed income to the national fiscus. Now, on the risk-adjusted strategy to deal with the various alert levels for the post-school education and training sector, we remain committed to resume academic activities in line with the National Risk-Adjusted Strategy in dealing with COVID-19. That's why I started by mentioning my visit this morning to TUT, because what I got out of TUT is that indeed they are working perfectly within the guidelines that we've provided. And they are preparing to actually do what we have outlined needs to be done so that we are able to complete the 2020 academic year. TUT, in fact, has set itself a plan for the whole academic year, and have indicated, yes, they might finish the academic year this time, not in November, but in January next year. But they have a plan, and that's what we want. And all our institutions have developed that, and indeed, they will be communicating with their own students individually. Now, under level 4 on universities, we allowed for the controlled return of final year students in programs that require clinical training, starting with students who are training as medical practitioners, and the phasing in of all other programs that require clinical or that involve clinical training, like nursing, dentistry, veterinary science, and so on. I further announced last time now that if we move, and as and when we move to level 3 alert level, within 2 to 3 weeks after that, we will then have the beginning of the phasing in of 33% of the students. That's what we're looking at TUT this morning, how ready they are. We are there now. Last time when I spoke, we were not there. We are there now. And we did outline. I don't want to be like, I'm wasting your time, but it's important that we remind ourselves. I did indicate which students, which first 33% of the students are going to return. And we said we're going to prioritize final year students, as well as postgraduate students needing laboratory equipment. And I outlined the different levels. And we've also made provisions that various institutions can adjust as to which students they may prioritize within that framework. But where they adjust, they will have to get our concurrence as the department, because, as we always say, remember, we are trying to finish and save the academic year, but primarily also we must save lives, which is very important. Now, on return to residences, I would like to urge all our institutions to ensure that at all material times they follow the national guidelines when deciding on the return of students to residences, in line with the numbers that can be accommodated to enable physical distancing, the handling of communal spaces, hygiene requirements, and dining hall arrangements. Now, all institutions also must ensure that students identified to reintegrate into campuses must include specific groups of students who are living with disabilities, who are not able to access connectivity where they live, or are living in circumstances where studying is difficult. There's also been a concern that has been raised as to what happens with the rental or student accommodation now that students are not in residences. We have open discussions with private providers of student accommodation, as well as with all institutions, that they need to open a discussion with the providers of student accommodation so that they can reach an understanding. Because we don't want a situation where students feel They've paid, but they've lost their money because they've not been staying in residences. Also, we are trying by all means to ensure that there is certainty on the part of the private providers of student accommodation as to what is going to happen in future. But we expect institutions to play a leading role, much as the department we are trying to provide a framework. For instance, the framework we are providing, if you take TUT, if TUT says, at this rate, of course, if nothing gets worse, because we can plan, but things get worse, we'll have to change. At this rate, the academic year is going to finish in January, not in November. Therefore, what deal do we need to make in terms of rent for students and other things in order to cater for this academic year, which will finish in January? As we proceed, we will be making the necessary announcement, but the institutions themselves will be making announcement, because as a department we can only provide a framework, but individual institutions. That's why it's very important for students to keep contact with their own institutions at all times. On TVET colleges, our phased-in TVET colleges tentative academic calendar remains as previously announced. For the Level 3 lockdown alert, it provides for the following, just as a reminder, that for engineering students, NATED engineering students, N6 and N3, the return has been 10th of June, N5 and N2, 15th of June, N4 and N1, 22nd of June. NATED Business Studies return N6, 25th of June, N5, 29th of June, N4, 6th of July. And NCV students, the return that is planned is 13th July for NCV Level 4, 20th July for NCV Level 3, and 27th of July, NCV Level 2. And a campus-based approach will be applied where colleges are affected by different lockdown level. But colleges also continue to use textbooks, e-guides, past question papers, and uploaded YouTube videos to further assist students. That's why the zero-rated website, in the case of those who will access online, also becomes helpful. On community education and training colleges, I just want to say very briefly, to remind everyone, our plan here largely hinges on our cooperation with the Department of Basic Education, as many of our learning sites in community education and training colleges, they actually use schools. Now, we had planned particular dates for return. Say we had said 25th of May is return of principals, deputy principals, 1st of June, center managers, 8th of June, all lecturers, and 17th of June, all students who are registered for the senior certificate. Now, all this is happening subject to maintaining the proper health protocols. But on monitoring the system, we would like to report that while management did return to central offices on the 25th of May, the center managers and lecturers did not return to their workstations on the dates as we had indicated. The principals had communicated to the center managers and lecturers that the learning centers were not yet compliant with the COVID-19 regulations. In other words, it has not happened as we had planned because many of the centers were not ready. Now, the reality is that where we are not ready, let's not put people's lives at risk. We would rather adjust. That is very important because our primary goal is to save lives. We know it's inconvenient. We know it's threatening people in terms of feeling that what they want to do, they may not achieve it. But where we are not ready, we are not going to open. Now, some of these CET centers have been hosted by schools that were not ready. So we have said If those schools are not ready, let's rather work together with those schools to make them to be ready. And not to lament and say the schools are not ready. Let's work together with the schools. And in any case, we are cooperating with the provincial departments of education on the whole very well in running these what were called adult basic education and training centers in the past. So therefore, given these constraints on the community education and training colleges and lack of readiness, I have then given community college the rest of this week and the rest of next week to finalize their preparations of the centers for the safe return of staff and students, so that with effect from the 23rd of June, teaching and learning starts for the groups of students that we have identified above, especially those who are coming for some occupational related programs and for senior certificate. On the SETAs, I want to reiterate my agreement with the chairpersons and CEOs of all our SETAs that during this lockdown period, we must continue to provide stipends to all of our SETA learnerships. Now that we have cleared the misunderstanding, where some SETAs had completely stopped the payments of stipends. But also I want to be honest and share with the public that some SETAs are facing difficulties because as part of trying to ease pressure on business, those that are paying the levies that SETAs are using in order to, amongst other things, provide stipends, employers were given a 4 months payment holiday that they are not going to be paying from May to August. And this has negatively affected the income of some of the SETAs, such that some of them are not able or may not be able to pay the 100% of the stipend. But at least we are negotiating or discussing with them that they must pay part of the stipend. That's one thing I want to say on the SETAs. But secondly, the president has indicated that the payment holiday is aimed at bringing relief to employers. But subsequently, in discussion with the president and with business and labor, there was a feeling that perhaps we should not have given a payment holiday to all the companies because some of them can afford. My apologies. Cheers to those companies who can afford so that they can pay. We have agreed with the president and said, Nzimande, go and talk to them. If they agree that they can afford, that's fine. The president was doing this with good intentions to try and save the economy. So we have engaged with business, we have engaged with labor. They are all agreed that we have to find a way that those employers who can pay must continue to pay. I will be announcing also once we finalize this, but we have already had an initial discussion and agreement with both business and labor that this is the route we need to follow. I'm also finalizing the criteria and guidelines regarding the activities of the skills development providers on how to deal with all the matters related to SETA training in the light of the situation that we are in, especially that they are also able to observe the risk-adjusted strategy. Don't rush trainees back to the workplaces or to training without at the same time taking into account the alert levels we are in. And where some have got to return to workplaces, make sure that you work closely with employers where those trainees are going to return so that we are able to handle everything within the guidelines that have been set by Cabinet. I would therefore like to appeal also to all employers, both public and private, to also turn their workplaces into training spaces in each and every alert level. Let's not stop training, but let's follow the guides as per each alert level. In conclusion, I would like to urge all South Africans and our students and staff to protect themselves and others from the spread of COVID-19. You all can reduce your chances of being infected or spreading COVID-19 by taking some simple precautions, which includes, amongst others, by regularly and thoroughly cleaning your hands and washing your hands with an alcohol-based hand rub or wash them with soap and water, and by maintaining at least 1 meter distance between yourselves and others. Try and avoid going to crowded places as much as you can, and avoid touching your eyes with your hands, nose and mouth, and always wear a mask. I am not wearing a mask now because I did explain. As I'm talking on television, those who have hearing challenges, they want to see my lips so that they follow better what I'm saying. And I would like to take this opportunity to once more thank all our stakeholders who we have been consulting throughout this process, and a special thanks to the President for his unwavering support to our sector and the work we are doing, my cabinet colleagues, my senior management in the department, and indeed the National Command Council. Thank you very much.
Good job,
Good job. Thank you. I hope I didn't misrepresent you.
No. Thank you very much, Minister. Without any further ado, let me call Higher Health just briefly to touch on progress in relation to the announcements that we've made last in May in relation to the work that they do. Please, Ramnath.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Honorable Minister, DG, Randall. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I also would like to greet the senior executives from the Department of Higher Education Training, fellow colleagues, as well as media, and as well as fellow South Africans who are listening to this. Minister, I really would like to thank you. From the very first day, you had made it very clear to us that hashtag Save Lives will run absolutely in parallel to hashtag Save the Academic Calendar. And I want to thank you because since that day, the priority of higher health, priority of all our campuses and preparation has been focused towards ensuring how do we put systems together for hashtag Save Lives. In my last briefing, thank you, Minister, we launched through yourself the Higher Health PSET guidelines that were quite detailed, worked through the NICD, National Department of Health, tailor-made for PSET system. In fact, in our PSET system, we've got various subsectors. We've got a university subsector. As Minister rightfully said, we've got a TVET subsector. Then we've got CET colleges subsector. We've got skill-based learning subsectors. But very critically, we also have private higher education institutions as subsector. And how does we put systems on each and every subsector as and when they are reopening? The strategy of our sector, of our PSET sector, under the leadership of the Minister, has been very clear towards hashtag Saving Lives, is through putting um, absolute evidence through scientific knowledge that has been continuously brought through global data, updates through NICD, National Department of Health. And I think that has been our guiding principles toward putting systems as and when we approach towards looking at every subsector in terms of systems putting infrastructure and systems putting towards reopening and hashtag save lives. Um, Protocols and algorithms are one of the key systems or one of the key areas of our focus so that it guides every institution of higher learning, every campus towards how do we put our infrastructure as and when we open our campuses for students and for staff, as well as for service providers who will also be parallelly coming to our institutions of higher learning. The minister has rightfully put all the protocols together, so I won't repeat on the protocols that have been covered, but I'd rather give you an update on where we are with our systems. We have over 200 campuses that are opening in the next 1 week, or has already opened through with our senior management and our academic staff coming, but our students will be joining in the next, specifically in our TVET colleges. And parallelly, in the same month, we have our universities' campuses also opening, with 33% of their student population coming inside. And just imagine we have such a big population of students and staff coming at the same time. Even if it's 33%, we're talking about thousands in one time entering our campuses. And how do we put systems when it comes to hashtag save lives? We have, Minister, all our COVID-19 task teams capacitated, developed, and running. The first step that we had to immediately put in place for all our institutions of higher learning, whether you are in universities, TVETs, CET colleges, or private higher education institutions. Per campus, we have on-site started training every campus steering committee. So from the COVID-19 task team, which is the decision-making body, we have COVID-19 steering committees or implementing agencies in every TVET campus that have gone through full on-site capacity development. From there, develops screening booths, develops cleaning protocols, ensuring every system of basic understanding of how cleaning will happen. Our lecturer rooms will not be the same as they were in the past. Our lecturers will move, not the students will go from one lecture to the other, just to ensure that we have absolute prevention and physical distancing put in place. And I think through the ministerial visit today at TUT, through deputy ministers' visits last week and this week of monitoring and higher health's continuous monitoring, we have been absolutely able to see how meticulous every campus is trying its level best to put every system from screening booths, cleaning protocols, and right up till how a day ends, from putting physical distance, security training, and every parameter in going forward. Health check, I just want to reinstate, is available on USSD, totally free for every South African student, even foreign student, staff, or a service provider. Hashtag star 134, star 832, star 2 hash is our number. You dial in, it's absolutely free, and you can go through. It takes about 1 to 1.5 minutes to do your whole screening tool. Screening is our sector's biggest priority. We want to isolate anyone who is high risk to COVID-19 immediately so that we prevent the spread of infection to many others. And that's been the sector's biggest priority of focus. And that has been the focus towards hashtag save lives. Similarly, this application is available on WhatsApp. The number is 0600110000. And you can follow the same 1.5 minutes of screening every day in order to ensure that you yourself know whether you are on low risk or moderate to high risk. The application will link you directly to the NDUH tracking and tracing system. And if you are cleared, you should leave your home and come to the campus. And if for any reason you are at high risk because you were in contact with the COVID-19 positive, the aim is for you to isolate yourself so that we help in preventing the spread of the infection to others, specifically in our campuses when thousands of students and staff will be coming in. We can also do it via web through healthcheck.higherhealth.ac.za. They are all available on DHET websites, Higher Health websites, and I urge and request every South African to please follow screening mechanism of your own institution, of your campuses. Um, every college, every TVET campus, every university campus has now a sick bay. If you anytime reach a campus and you have any sign and symptom that signifies you to be on moderate to high risk, you will be taken to a sick bay and escorted towards the next support services as per to the guidelines and protocols that we have now put in place at every institutional level. Going forward, this week, we have a full training and capacity program for private higher education institutions. 18% of our student communities and staff are also in private higher education. And it's our work to ensure that these protocols speak to them and engage them. And we are capacitating all our private higher education institutions this week. Parallelly, we have already capacitated our CET colleges, 9 CET colleges. And going forward from the week of the 17th of June, every 18 of our 1800 sub-centers will start being capacitated through these protocols and guidelines. I'm ready to take as many questions if possible around this issue, but hashtag Save Lives remains our absolute priority. Issues of mental health, as Minister rightfully said, we've launched our guidelines not only on mental health, but mental health and substance abuse. We do see that COVID-19, as per the UN and WHO, across the world and globally, young people specifically and staff will get affected with mental health. And I think the protocol word by word guides every campus for systems and infrastructure that we are now putting in place in relation to the psychosocial support and services for our students and staff. With that note, Minister, I gratefully thank you for putting hashtag Save Lives as a high priority, and that has really helped all our campuses to prepare in those lines. Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Ramnet.
Thank you, Minister.
re a go leboga Ramnik ka bokopanyana ke kgopela go tlhaloša tabela ya di-data. Minister o na tlhaloša gore di-data di gona re tlo thoma go di fa ma-studente go ya ka mokgwa ba beakantše le di-university tša bona. So re kgopela gore le kgolaganyeng le di-university tša lena go netefatša gore le qualifyela go humana di-data tše fela ba NSFAS gape le ba Funda Lushaka bona le a tseba gore re tlhalošitše maloba gore lena le tlo di humana ka lebaka la gore le lefelelwa dithuto tša lena ke pušo. Gape minister ra tlhaloša tabela ya di-gadgets tsona di-laptop gore le tšona re sa feleletša tabela le National Treasury ya go netefatša gore re na le tokelo ya gore re ka reka di-laptops. Re tla gopola gore nageng ya rena re na le melao e leng gona gore re kgone go ka šomiša mašeleng a pušo gore re kgone go ka ba accountable. Now re tlo netefatša gore yona beke re le mo go yona process ela ya go reka di-laptop ya thoma, and then in 3 to 4 weeks re tla boa gape re le tlhalošetša gore re sepetše le gona gore re fitlhile kae gore le ka kgona go humana di-laptop. E fela minister o kgopela gore ba le na le di-cellphone ka bontši re a tseba gore le na le tšona, šomišang tšona gore le kgone go ka berekiša data la re le fang yona go ka humana ditlabakelo tša go ithuta mo di-websiteng tša rena gape le tše le goreng re di-site tša la re di bitša gore ke di-zero rated sites. With those few words, I would like to go to the second part of our briefing by asking members of the media to ask questions through the lines that we have already provided. I want to believe that there is Seho and Reggie at the back that will give us the questions. Then we will respond to them. Tsego, Reggie?
Mr. Nisi is Ignatius.
Or Ignatius, my apologies. Ignatius?
Yes, I have Mandla from UDAF Radio.
Mandla, please go on.
Okay. Hello, Minister. I want to ask you some 4 questions here. First of all, are you not worried that the quality of education passed on to students is going to be inadequate, given the fact that students have been complaining about how they are chasing deadlines but not gaining anything whatsoever, but they are just doing deadlines and just checking answers online and everything else. Second one is over the past few weeks and hashtags have been doing rounds on social media about how universities should fall, UWC must fall, VUT must fall, and some of those owing to NSFAS appeals not being concluded, data not being procured or zero-rated website requiring active balances for them to be able to access them. It's been 3 months since the online learning has been on, and students seemingly are left behind. What's your response to that one? And also, in the last briefing, you sort of misinterpreted this question, but I'll sort of reiterate it. Given all the student cries about how daunting and traumatic the online learning is, unconducive studying environments, students will sort of say it's inevitable. Will then the N1 and N1 N+1 and N+2 NSFAS policy be waived or effective for the current academic year, as students will sort of fail? And also, I want you to sort of attest as to how many previously disadvantaged universities, excluding UCT, VET, Stellenbosch and Rhodes, and UP, that have been that are ready and are willing to accept that first 33% you sort of gazetted in your regulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mandla. Next question.
Mr. Nisi, I have Khapa Lelwi from Jacaranda FM.
Haupalele, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Minister, for that briefing. I just wanted to find out, talking about mental health, has there been any incidents of either attempted suicide or successful in campuses for those students who are still there? Do we have any reports on that? Because we've had rumors of some of these things happening at UJ specifically. Please do give us details on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have questions on WhatsApp or are we still on the line?
Yes, Chair, we do have questions on WhatsApp. We'll take 4 for now.
Okay.
The first 2 questions are from Nazir from Glow TV. He's asking how many lecturers are over the age of 60 years and how many have health ailments making them high risk for COVID-19. And also, have they been advised to stay at home, and have you made alternative arrangement to get other lectures, or will these lectures teach from home? The next 2 questions are from Precious Lisupi from the African Post. She's asking, the department always excludes the missing middle in so many of its plans to assist students, especially during this time. What measures have been put in place to assist this batch of students? She's also asking, students are having problems in various institutions. For instance, some are not afforded an opportunity to hand in assessments later because of things like load shedding, and some are also having trouble accessing permits at police stations, especially those living in private accommodation. What is being done to help the students? Those are the questions for now, Chair.
Thank you very much. As I've indicated before, we do have joining the minister is the NSFAS administrator. We also have the DG of the department. We also have higher health. As you might have seen, some of the questions are relevant to some of our stakeholders. Minister, should I start with you or should we start with the colleagues, administrator? Dr. Carolison, please come forward.
I thought someone said we can answer sitting here. We don't have to go up there. The camera will shift and
Definitely.
yeah, okay.
Once again, good afternoon. So the issue that the Minister referred to about the N plus appeals that we have been that we've not been finalizing, it was a question of the policy and the interpretation of that policy. And so those are the appeals that are outstanding. Now with this announcement, we'll be able to finalize it quite quick because the team at NSFAS had already started working on it. And it is because, like the Minister said, of increased efficiency. We are able to track students across the sector at the moment. And so in many cases, students have traveled from one university to another, and therefore we can pick it up. But what we can't pick up in the EMA system, we can't pick up whether a student had dropped out in the first semester. We can't pick up whether a student had dropped out because of medical and social reasons, psychosocial reasons. And now, with this announcement, we are now can entertain such appeals and we can hopefully finalize it very quick. The reason why we also extended this to final year students is pragmatism, because it's better to get those students to teach them out of the system and then allow them to go and work and repay NSFAS the loan amount, because the N+2 systems are under a loan amount. So these are pragmatic reasons, and we hope that we will, with this measure, not I hope, I'm sure with this measure we can close out any final appeals. So thank you, Minister, and thanks for those concessions.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Minister and colleagues. The question of quality in respect to program offerings is in our institutions. It's not compromised by any standard. Our institutions have been, during this time, in discussion with all quality assurance bodies in respect to the adaptability insofar as the mode of offerings has actually been diversified across the system at the present moment without whittling down quality by any account or by any measure. So that one is not really an issue or a worry. They are up to speed in working out a very diverse range of program offerings as well as support to students. Now, N+2, N+1 should be waived at the present moment. Now, that discussion hasn't arisen, reason being that institutions long before COVID-19, in respect to university capacity development grant, there is a component in there which relates to staff development, which is highly funded by millions, as well as student support for them to be able to adapt to new conditions that are exposed to, so that they are able to enhance their capacity to adapt and carry on with their studies. Even during this time, that factor is actually taken into full account by all our institutions at the present moment. And to elaborate further in respect to this matter, with all institutions, we worked with them in respect to their institutional plans that are actually applicable to the circumstances that each and every institution is confronted with, and where there has been a requirement for an additional support of one form or the other, we have actually lashed into that together with the National Treasury, where there are some funding mechanisms that are required as to how in this situation could reprioritize some of the funds to actually respond to the COVID-19 challenges. So the minister has approved the establishment of a special dispensation grant called COVID-19 Responsiveness Grant, which is dedicated into addressing all challenges that are related to COVID-19. I just thought I needed to elaborate on that question, which also includes the plans of institutions to actually receive back students in a phased, controlled manner, as the minister has actually outlined. It's not just a mere declaration. It's emanating from the plans that the institutions have actually developed, and the implementation then of those plans with all the necessary mechanisms that should actually be in place having been attended to. Mental health, no. I think the minister is raising this matter as one of the matters that should not escape our minds and our notices, because it's always a factor in society. Taking into consideration the new condition, it is quite clear, and according to the advice of medical experts, that there may be a surge in respect to mental health related matters. Therefore, the minister felt it important that we should take a proactive step in respect to dealing with this matter, so that we don't respond to a problem when it arises at whatever scale. We know it will be there. So that's why upfront we had to plan as well as put resources to address it as and when it arises in any form and in any institution or campus for that matter. Lecturers that may be of a particular age, no, that matter is being dealt with at institutional level and is being addressed as directed by the Department of Health and other health experts within the system and within government as a whole. But we have to also take into account that amongst other methods that have been developed for program offerings, it's multimodal program offerings, which actually means that quite a number of lecturers would be able to offer and do work in relation to teaching and learning whilst they are at home or in safe spaces where they can be alone and discharge those responsibilities. So whether we are old or we have got some conditions, you would be actually utilized fully in respect to the circumstances that you are confronted with in that particular space. The question of assessment, we engage on this with institutions, and I'm glad that all our institutions have indicated that they will be able to give alternative opportunities for assessments, even if some continuous assessment form or kind or the other will be actually be considered, because the question of assessment is not just one-dimensional, it's multidimensional to assess the capacity and the understanding of a student in respect to a particular learning area. Our institutions are well aware, and they are actually working on this matter adequately in respect to the plans that we have gone through with them. There is nothing that relates to the question of teaching, learning, research that has been left unattended or to chance. Everything has been subjected to the new circumstances in terms of the current plans. Thank you very much.
Ramnik, do you want to add something particularly on the question asked by Gaupalelwe on the attempted suicide at UJ? Are we aware of it? And what are we doing in planning for such eventualities? Can you please come, sir? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Ishmael. DG did cover the element of the mental health of being very proactive. Absolutely, we were informed about the University of Johannesburg case, but the case has been very well supported by the university itself, and there is no doubt that as the global data is coming. Mental health and UN and United Nations and WHO have released the alert across all the countries in the world around the rise of the mental health cases due to the epidemic or a pandemic like this, which is very unprecedented, and it affects all of us. And I think that's why the protocol that was launched today by the Minister, the guidelines on mental health and substance abuse, has primarily been in a position to put these algorithms together for every campus and every campus steering committee of the COVID-19 to now see it as a huge priority. There will be additional psychologists, clinical psychologists that Higher Health is putting in every province. Similarly, there are counseling units that Higher Health is consulting at this moment with student counseling units at every institutional level for capacity development and enriching them. Our nurses have already been trained on mental health, specifically because we wanted to treat mental health from primary healthcare level and then go to the tertiary and secondary level, which is clinical psychologists and above. And parallelly, we have also equally got supported from the South African Depression and Anxiety body, who also helps us with call centers and hotlines. So there's a comprehensive modality, but there is also systems that needs to be also further put that the algorithm guides on. Lastly, regarding the comorbidity and above 60, the guidelines of the Department of Higher Health are very much aligned to the Department of Labor. As well as the Minister, as the DG said, on the Department of Health and the OHS, which is the Occupational Health. So which clearly points out, and if you do the health check asks you, one of the big question on screening is your age. And because of the age being as a screening factor for COVID-19, it's a huge priority even when you do your screenings every day through your health check or through your institutional screening mechanism. Thank you, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now call the Minister to answer the remaining questions, and we'll take the second last round of questions.
Thank you, Ishmael, and thanks to the answers that have been provided. Just a few things perhaps that may not have been touched on, or a few additions. Firstly, the DG has spoken about the quality councils. I just want also to emphasize that in the ministerial task team on post-school education and training, the quality councils sit in there so that we work together with them, so that we do maintain standards, and also we understand issues that are a threat to the standards and all that, and also to understand the environment in which we are working. And quality counselors are the experts who are actually able to guide us and deal with this. I think that from what we saw at TUT this morning, it actually gave me confidence that the multimodal remote learning approach is possible. And we are working with all our universities on that. We have, as we have said, identified universities that seem to be okay, as well as universities that are facing certain challenges. And we are working with them so that we honor our commitment that no student must be left behind. And we are confident in terms of our assessment now that we will be able to actually address this multimodal remote learning for those students, by the way, the 66%, as from a week or two from now, because the 33% likely to go back, and that will make a big change. By the way, the 33% that will go back will also provide some relief through contact learning for us to be able to pay even more attention to the challenges of the 66% that requires that the multimodal system becomes effective. As we said, it's multimodal because it's not just only onlining. And we want to emphasize this because this question keeps coming as if the remote learning is only online. We have said, like TUT is doing, they said they are starting the process of delivering to be ready for the 20th of July. Not to be ready now, not 20th. 20th they are taking the first 33%. But to be ready now, they are starting the process of delivering materials physically to particular centers throughout the country where the students can be able to fetch those. So I am confident that we are not saying that we don't have challenges or we don't have problems. I am confident that we'll achieve this. What we would like to plead for, though, as South Africans, I have to say this, Ishmael. As South Africans, even under the darkest days of apartheid, we never saw ourselves just as victims who must fold arms and hope that one day freedom will come. We can't then be now saying, well, I am a poor student who comes from a rural area where there is no connectivity. Therefore, I'll sit and wait and see what Nzimande brings and what the administrator of NSFAS brings. We are calling upon parents and students. As we make all this effort, also make whatever extra effort as well that you can make, so that we are able to reach you, not just sitting and folding, but also coming forward. That's what also we've been requesting from student leadership. Work with us so that we are able to reach out to all our students. And I'm quite confident that with that kind of attitude, when we say, for instance, or when TUT says, here are the centers in different parts of the country where those of you without connectivity can go and fetch lectures, old question papers by hand. Make an effort to go there. We have done our bit. NSFAS has not stopped paying allowances. Use those allowances to go to that center as a NSFAS student to go and pick up that material. We are going this long mile as government, but we are saying also, help us to reach you as well. And that's why I would like to work with all the stakeholders to be able to address this. I just thought I needed to say that. Very quickly then, on the other matter of the missing middle. By the way, what I have not reminded South Africans is that when was this time when we did this study on the missing middle? What year was it? 2015? 2016. I commissioned a study which was led by Mr. Nzimande on the missing middle, on how we can help and assist missing middle. Out of that study, we asked Mr. Nzimande to establish a program to assist the missing middle called ISFAP. Obviously, it's dependent on the private sector because it's outside the monies that government can be able to afford. As I've committed that I want to pursue this matter, will be to go back to ISFAP and see what is it that they are doing now and what additional measures can we take to have an affordable loan system for higher education, with a particular focus on the missing middle. So there's a lot of groundwork that I had already done in 2016 on what needs to be done. So we won't be starting from scratch. And as I have said, I'm committed that by the end of the year, we should actually be able to say what is feasible and what is possible. But we have to go out and engage with the private sector, mainly the banks. They are the ones. I'm told ISFAP has got about 8,000. That's too little. It's doing good work, but it's too little because the estimation of what is the missing middle is far, far, far higher than that. So that is what I would actually say. We are also aware, for instance, TUT was telling us that I think they've reprioritized, did they say 100 million?
Yes, Minister, through their scholarship bursary fund.
To their scholarship bursary fund, they've reprioritized 100 million rands targeted at assisting the missing middle. I know that many universities are actually doing that, and we are encouraging them to do that whilst we try to work towards a final solution to actually address that issue. I am concerned, there was the issue that was raised about assisting students, who can't get permits from police stations. I am concerned about that, and I'm going to be attending to this because I, for instance, got one approach from a student who happens to be coming from Pietermaritzburg, who is studying at Eguruleni TVET College, who went to the police station to get a permit so that she can start preparing to come back when the students are being called back as per our plan. But she says to me she went to a police station, she produced some evidence that she's a student, but she was not given the permit. I am committed that, DG, we need to set a mechanism to assist those students, even that there should be a call center where they can actually say, I am here having a problem, and then we are able to actually assist. Because we don't want those things to negatively affect, because there is now going to be, with this first 1/3, there's going to be movement of students from one province to another. So on our side, I'm very committed that we will create a mechanism of where students, if they've got problems or obstacles, as to where they should actually be going to, so that we can try our best to assist. I am worried. This issue, by the way, has not just only been raised by that student. A number of students have raised them with me. Just the last two things very quickly, Ishmael. There's one thing I also need to mention on the issue of mental health, by the way. We were approached a few weeks ago by Professor Nhlanhla Mkhize, who is one of the deputy vice chancellors at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. He happens to be a clinical psychologist, with a wonderful proposal on what they are planning to do as UKZN, bringing together teams of social workers, psychologists, nurses, to actually assist in different areas. We have put them in touch with the higher health, and also we've put them in touch with the health and welfare SETA, which I understand is committed to assist them. And we want to use that as a pilot for the rest of the country. The UKZN has come up with that, which is very good. It's one of our universities. And Health and Welfare SETA seems to be saying this thing can work, and we will use it as a pilot so that also it can be used in the rest of the country. It also includes, by the way, very creative ways of online counseling, where it can be offered, for instance, in order to massify the effort of dealing with the issue of mental health, which is one of the issues that we have to deal with. I have already dealt with the 33%, and that I'm confident from what we've seen at TUT today and the work, in any case, that we are doing with institutions as the department, that we will be able to overcome this what we are pleading for is that let's also meet each other halfway rather than to sit back and say, I'm waiting for government to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister TG, Administrator Ramnik. We are now going to take the last sets of questions, colleagues. Ignatius, do we have any on the line?
Yes, Mr. Minister.
Yes,
Phone
sir.
caller.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Lisidi Mopai from Tobela FM.
Hi, Lesedi, go on, please.
Hi, thank you so much. My question is regarding the N+2 rule. There are some students who saying that they have been funded this year. They have been receiving allowance. They stopped our allowance in April, and then the institution told them that they are affected by the rule. So what will happen to those students? Because those students, they didn't get the opportunity to appeal. What will happen to them? And then the other, regarding the N+ rule, there's some other students that are saying they are new applicants. So what will happen to them because they are new applicants? They were never NSFAS beneficiary. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. On WhatsApp, do we have any messages?
Yes, Chair. We have 7 questions on WhatsApp. The first 2
Can we
questions are from...
prioritize probably? For those that might have been asked, we prioritize new questions, unless if they have not been asked, all of them.
All are new questions, sir.
Okay.
The first 2 questions are from Muunga Sirai from Ingonjani FM. He's asking what criteria will be used to give out laptops to NSFAS students in TVET colleges. He's saying some students who are funded by NSFAS are currently doing internships. Will they get laptops? The second question is from Bonga from EWN. He's asking, Minister, are there any updates about reagents and how is production going? The fourth question is from Sophie Mukwena, SABC foreign editor. She's saying the recent Black Lives Matter movement is dominated by young people around the world. Has the department looked into the recent protest and the impact it might have when institutions of higher learning resume classes? The next follow-up question is from Nazir. He's saying that there has been many thefts of laptops from schools. What measures have been implemented to curb the problem of laptop thefts from university students? That's it for now, Chair.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Let me start with NSFAS. I think there are a number of questions directed to that might need their response.
Thank you. Thank you for those questions. And it gives me the opportunity also to clarify a few things. So a student only becomes NSFAS funded once we receive the NSFAS registration dates, once we receive the registration data of that student from the university or the TVET college. Before that, you only qualify for NSFAS. So we only fund you once you're registered. Unfortunately, we have a phased phasing that we need to work on, so that we receive the registration data only late March and early April. And so what happens is that we provide universities with upfront to sustain students during January, February and March when they have not received yet their NSFAS allowances. And so in the case when we receive the registration data at the end of March, beginning April, we then found out that some students did not qualify for NSFAS based on the N+ rule. And according to that finding, we had to then unfortunately unfund them. We have treated that as an appeal, and that will be considered in the new regimes that the Minister has now announced. The issue with new applicants that are applying for the first time and they are not, and now saying they are not subject to the N+2 rule. The N+2 rule is very clear. It is not the amount of years that you are funded by NSFAS. It is the amount of years that you are in the system. So if you have been traveling in the system for 8 years and you've never been funded by NSFAS and you now apply for NSFAS, you are not going to get NSFAS because you exceeded the N plus rule. And there can be debates whether the rule is fair or not, but we cannot continue to fund students indefinitely because there are new students that must come into the system and be supported. The criteria for TVET students for laptops, if you are a TVET student that receive NSFAS or you qualify for NSFAS, you will also qualify for a laptop. Now this is very important. Perhaps I have the opportunity, Minister, to clarify this. This is not new funding in the case of universities. University students get every year 5,200 Rand for teaching aid allowances. So if you are in the system for a 3-year degree, you get 4-year funding and every year you get 5,200 Rand. Now in the past, this used to be referred to as book allowances, and these book allowances were issued via vouchers, and these students were directed to booksellers. And we are correcting it this year to say, no, it's not a book allowance, it's a teaching aid allowance. And in some cases, universities this year have used their allowances to actually purchase these digital devices for their students. In the cases where universities did not do it, we are therefore will be assisting them, but it will come off next year's book allowance. It's not a freebie for university students. Now, of course, there are nuances we have to pay attention to. In the case of TVET students, they've never received book allowances or teaching aid allowances, so this is a first. And I'm personally very delighted that our skills-based students are also now getting the technology enablement that will make them compete and be effective in the modern world. If you these days go to a garage and a mechanic can't switch on a computer, I certainly would not be very comfortable with that. The issue of students of laptops being stolen at schools, these laptops we intend to deliver directly to students, enabled with all the software that they required, and also preloaded with the institution's learning management system. So we are not going to have a situation where a warehouse full of computers are going to be anywhere at an educational institution. It is going to be delivered directly to the students because it's the ownership lies with the student. And there's also other issues that we have to talk about in our discussion about insurance and what happens if students drop out and all a host of these things. But I want to emphasize that the student holds the ownership of this device and not the institution.
Thank you. I would call the Minister to wrap up the briefing with the few questions that remains.
Thank you. Let me just start by saying this. There is something I've been wanting to do, and I think that I need to do it soon. There is lots of work that the Department of Science and Innovation is doing in the fight against COVID-19. But unfortunately, it tends to be overshadowed by the immediacy of the issues on universities and colleges. I am planning very soon to come and give a dedicated press briefing on work that is being done by the Department of Science and Innovation. Very important work that the country actually needs to understand about. I'll be working towards doing that. In fact, we're debating this time around whether we shouldn't be giving a briefing on DSI. But we said, since we've just started June, let's give progress on work that we have actually done. For instance, the work that we are talking about, the sanitizers and disinfectants that are produced at TUT, that laboratory is funded as a technology center by the Department of Science and Innovation. It's funded by our Technology Innovation Agency. The fact that it's able to produce what it is producing, it's because of the work by the Department of Science and Innovation in helping towards repurposing that laboratory to actually produce this. So that's why also even the issue of reagents, I respect the question has been asked, There's a lot of work that we are doing on reagents and so on. But I would rather prefer that I deal with this in some detail when I hopefully not later than next week, Ishmael, we can have, with GCIS permitting, our bosses when it comes to communication, to give us space to come and talk about science and innovation. And this is very important, by the way, because this helps South Africans to understand the importance of science in all what we are doing. Usofi from SABC, the question you're asking about Black Lives Matter, this matter has become a global issue, rightly so too. The issue of racism. So everyone is following this as to what is happening, but not only following it, there is generally a sentiment as articulated by the president last week, that as South Africans, we understand exactly the reaction, not only from the United States, but in the world globally. As to whether this will have impact on universities, we don't think so. We don't think so. We haven't seen signs of that. Not that it's not an important issue. Not that it's not a matter that actually needs to be dealt with. I would just like to add on the issue of laptops. Of course, NSFAS will be acquiring this, but one of the things that should be a requirement, and NSFAS will do this, I have no doubt about that, is also security of the gadgets. Apart from ownership that the administrator has rightly spoken about, when we acquire these laptops, we also have to make sure that in the very specific requirements for acquisition, there must be security features such that if a laptop is stolen, it is traceable. We know that usually these things, they actually help, that in the end, many of these stolen laptops actually do get recovered. Doesn't guarantee 100% that they won't be lost forever, but they actually do contribute. So it's something that we will have to be dealing with. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, DG, the administrator. Just the final remark from my side. For those that have questions that they would still like to ask, especially in relation to the challenges that the minister they raised with the Minister of Traveling and so on, we are working on augmenting the capacity that we have on our call center. However, I want to give the number of our call center. We have dedicated people that are mending this call center. They will take your questions and be able to provide the necessary guidance that you need. The call center number is 0800 872222. 0800 872222, or send us an email at callcenter@dhet.gov.za. callcenter@dhet.gov.za. With those few words, ladies and gentlemen of the media, thank you very much for your time. We will update you on the next press briefing as the Minister has announced on the Department of Science and Innovation and other matters that relates to the Department of Higher Education and Training. Will continuously as well update you through the dedicated statements that we might issue or through the questions that directly media sends to the department. Thank you very much for your time.